Thanks, Ross. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to kick this thing off. It's going to be kind of light and fun, so don't worry, you won't get bored. That's cool. Let's test it. Oh yeah, it works. I've always thought of myself kind of as a revolutionary, and I think a lot of people in this room feel the same way. But I've realized lately that that's not really what we're working on here. Revolutions are actually really destructive. When you're revolting against something, you're trying to take down a man, right? But that's not what we're doing in the crypto scene. We're being creative. We're actually creating a new way for people to organize themselves. At least, especially in this conference, right? It's much more creative. Revolutions are always focused on one specific thing, right? Unless you're talking general industrial revolution or something like that. Usually, when we think of revolutions, it's like overthrowing this dictator here in this one location. Whereas evolution is happening all around us all the time, which is absolutely what's going on in crypto. We have a global thing going where people are popping up new innovations all the time. Revolutions also happen really quickly. You can overthrow a dictator in a day, right? But evolutions are slow. As we've seen in crypto, things take a lot more time than you would expect. And you never know where you're going with an evolution, right? There's lots of experiments, and we'll see which ones work. The most important thing, though, is that revolutions can fail. Whereas evolution cannot be stopped. It's always happening, and we're writing unstoppable code. And so I really want to throw this term out there to you guys, that we're actually evolutionaries. We're evolutionaries trying to bring decentralized governance to the world, but we have a lot of stuff that needs to get figured out before we can all of a sudden just be like, yeah, hey, take your DAO. The DAO, it works great, right? No, it didn't. It wasn't decentralized anyway. There's a lot of pieces to get to decentralized governance. So I'm just going to run through this, and I'm going to have a little fun with it, okay? We're going to follow my buddy Theo here. Theo is kind of a wild guy, right? And he is addicted to sovereignty. We're going to travel through space and time with Theo, and as he chases the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, decentralized governance. Theo's a cryptonaut. He's got hundreds of currencies. He's wild about it. He's always been on all the exchanges playing games. And he finally got onto decentralized exchanges. And he realized, wow, I actually have sovereignty over my funds on trustless.ethfinex, right? He's got control. And in 2019, with Giv's help, Ethfinex actually bridged to Bitcoin, and now you can use Bitcoin on trustless exchanges too. And he is stoked. He never touches any centralized money anymore. He doesn't have a bank account. He doesn't need one, because he can use local Bitcoins, Tether, and other decentralized exchanges like Ethfinex to move his money around whenever he wants. But then he was like, hey, wait a second. I'm hanging out in Seattle, and I'm using Comcast to get access to the internet. What the hell? This is not going to work, right? So he was following in 2020, there's been some big movements in Catalonia, and it all started with this referendum in 2017 where Guifi.net really shined. Guifi.net is a mesh network in Catalonia that has over 30,000 nodes. Actually goes into Spain and I think France as well. And he heard about them and just brought his whole family out to Barcelona to get connected to the decentralized internet, because this guy's kind of crazy. He loves his sovereignty. And he met a buddy named Tim. Tim's an awesome network engineer who really makes it his goal to bring free internet to the people, right? But of course, Tim had to pay for all this hardware and all these things. And in 2021, Guifi was able to bring in a cryptocurrency system where Theo could just pay Tim indirectly using some tokens for his Wi-Fi. He never had to have a service plan, didn't have to have a contract. He just threw him some tokens whenever he wanted extra bandwidth, and he was good to go. And Theo wanted some extra bandwidth, okay? Because as time got on, he realized, wait, he's running all his Monero and Bitcoin and all these clients on DigitalOcean droplets and Amazon Web Services. He doesn't have control over his own hardware. And that's when he heard of DataNote, right? DataNote had gotten really big by now. We're in 2022 or something. And he got super stoked because he could have his own server in his own house. Does anyone here have a server in their house where they run things? Oh, not bad. Not bad at all. I think we have like less than 10%. Pretty good. Which is seriously more than 5% is killing it. No one has a server, right? So he does, because he's running DataNote, and he's running all of his clients, and he's even making money off DataNote because he's got some, he's staking Ethereum and Zencash, and he has all the staking clients. We're in the future. Ethereum staking now. And then DataNote DAO actually bought Facebook. Who would have thought, right? And so it was a customer acquisition deal. So I'm so glad I got laughs. So DataNote DAO bought Facebook so that he could actually provide connections for all of his friends and family on Facebook. Because DataNote has this magical ability where one person Theo's not a sysadmin, okay? He's just a normal dude who's got a little bit of tech savvy because of crypto, but that's it. And he can actually connect all of his friends and family through his server, kind of acting like Infura for everybody else. And so now and because they bought Facebook, I mean, everyone knows a couple people with DataNotes. So you don't need these big centralized servers anymore. But then Theo had a baby, right? This baby's name? Beyonce. Beyonce was his opportunity to really take a leap. He didn't want a birth certificate. Theo is not into this whole centralized power, obviously. He wants sovereignty. But luckily, we're in 2027 or something like that, and IDEN 3 has come full circle. Jordy will talk a lot more about IDEN 3, so I don't need to go big on it, because he's talking later tomorrow. But basically, when Beyonce was born, he could actually make a claim that Beyonce is her name, and how tall she was, her weight, what color her eyes were, her birthday, all the classic things that people would put on a birth certificate, but Theo was able to make that claim. And more importantly, Theo's doctor was also able to make that claim, and Theo's doctor was certified by the state of Washington, and because they flew back to Seattle, grandparents and all these things, gonna have the baby back home. So then when Beyonce didn't need a birth certificate. Lots of people could certify her identity. And so eventually they went back to Barcelona, and Theo's a big gamer now because he's rich, he doesn't have anything else to do because crypto's killing it, right? And so one of his video games was being run on an Ethereum plasma chain, and all of a sudden there was a bug in that plasma chain, and he was really worried about it. So he didn't know what to do. But then he went to Telegraph. Telegraph is a place where you can see all the signals that stakeholders of Ethereum blockchains are giving off, right? He wanted to know specifically, hey, are these people running the upgraded software so that I can still go kill this warlock, or am I going to just lose the swords and the points I earn? And so, easy, he goes to Telegraph, it's an easy website. He can see which nodes are running, which software. He can see what the influencers are saying. He can see what all the validators are saying about the bug. And boom, he has the information. His mind is at ease. He can go play the video game and earn all the points he wants. Now, he's not just a gamer, right? He's a wealthy crypto guy. So now he's trying to figure out, hey, how can I make the world a better place? He's recently moved to Thailand, and he's living on an island, and there's lots of dirty garbage on the beach, and he's just sick of it. He doesn't want to see that when he goes out to the beach every day, and really, he thinks that, it's really sad what they're doing to the oceans in 2030 at this point. Luckily, Giveth has beta tested a lot of interesting experiments in decentralized governance. One of them, of course, is Curation Markets. Curation markets are really experimental now, but in 2030, man, they have it on lockdown. They have all the parameters figured out. And this guy, Jeff, actually decided to start a Trash Hero DAC. So Trash Hero DAC is a decentralized, altruistic community focused on getting trash taken care of and making the environment nice and clean. So Trash Hero DAC's first project was in Thailand to clean up the beaches, take off all the trash, and so it was perfect for Theo. And Jeff set up the parameters for his curation market. How many people here are pretty familiar with curation markets? Yeah, like TCRs and all that? Okay, there's some hands that have talked, so. So I'll go through it a little bit slower, but like you can read the numbers on the screen. Basically, Jeff sent in some ether to the contract and then got a bunch of tokens back for himself, right? This is a philanthropic investment. And his tokens were locked for a certain amount of time. And that 100 ether, it doesn't go to some multi-sig like an ICO. It stays in the contract to be used to actually buy back the tokens after it's being locked for a while. But also to buy back tokens that are created for the Trash Hero DAC. So Jeff gets some tokens, but also this community of people that are focused on an altruistic cause get some tokens that they can then spend on actually bringing a solution for those problems. Theo also wants in on this. He was there at the beginning because he follows all the crypto stuff really closely. And so he sent just as much ether in as Jeff did, but he got less tokens. Because as the curation market goes on and more people start investing in this philanthropic enterprise, they get less and less tokens. It's a token bond curve. So his tokens are also locked for the same amount of time as Jeff. And the 20% of the tokens that he bought were then sent to the Trash Hero DAO, Trash Hero DAC. And so then those tokens that go to the DAC, they don't have a locking time, and they can be used to actually help incentivize people to go pick up trash on the beaches of Thailand. And of course, a curation market's got to have a TCR, right? So this is actually the governance for the Trash Hero DAC. The Trash Hero DAC has a bunch of people that are throwing out ideas. They have a kind of a chat room, a community of people that are saying, hey, I know, let's go to Pattaya and pick up this beach on Saturday. And it would be really cool if we could get 1,000 THC Trash Hero coins, 1,000 THCs to incentivize everybody who comes up so we can throw a big party afterwards, because Pattaya is a party town. And so boom, Jeff and Theo actually stake their tokens so they can say yes, because they're near Pattaya and they're excited about that party. And so the people who stake tokens, even though they're locked, they can still become stakers. They actually get to make the decisions and influence how this community uses their shared resource. Because that's what DAOs and DACs in this circumstance are meant to do. They're meant to govern shared resources. So eventually, Trash Hero DAC takes off. Jeff and Theo are like a dynamic duo. They're killing it. And by 2032, they have actually cleaned up all the beaches in Thailand with sustainable solutions. Amazing, right? And they started with Thai beaches, but as they got done with the beaches and there was no more trash to pick up because they built sustainable solutions, they actually moved to cities and started replacing the services that the governments were actually providing and with a more community-focused architecture. So Bangkok by 2033, all Trash Hero DAC, right? There's nothing else. There's no other government services. In fact, the nation of Thailand is buying ether so they can have some stake in Trash Hero DAC and influence what parts of Bangkok get trash collected. And eventually, Trash Hero DAC starts getting everywhere throughout the world. So by 2037, everyone in the world knows of Trash Hero DAC. It's not necessarily picking up everybody's garbage, but it's hot shit, okay? Like, if you want to get into garbage service, you work for Trash Hero DAC. And here we are, 2037. There are a lot of DAOs all over the place with all this perfect infrastructure that's been built out, decentralized hardware, decentralized identity, of course decentralized money and decentralized internet. Actual DAOs can come to life and start taking over. And Theo heard about some rumblings early on about the country of Bermuda. Bermuda is thinking about taking their entire country's governance off of the legalese, the legal contracts that they've constructed, and actually bringing it to the blockchain, writing their code in Viper, right? Because literally, anyway, so Bermuda is now. Theo came early and started laying the groundwork. Got Trash Hero DAC set up there real quick. Got rid of all their water resource infrastructure for clean water DAC. And a lot of Giveth DAOs actually started providing services the government would usually do. And eventually they even moved their voting to a liquid democracy setup. And the politicians of Bermuda ended up still being the same politicians that were working as politicians under the old system. So they were like, yeah, this stuff is great. It's just a better way for humans to organize. And the Aragon DAC was providing most of the infrastructure for Bermuda. I kind of forgot about that. So eventually they were able to bring all of Bermuda to a blockchain-based nation state, the first of the world. So yeah, here we are. We went through the rainbow. We have decentralized money, decentralized internet, decentralized hardware, decentralized identity, and eventually decentralized governance. Looks like my slides weren't totally loaded, but so we're obviously not in 2037. We have a little bit of work to do, guys, and I know this is a decentralized governance conference, and I'm really stoked that we can start playing around with DGov, but we need to at least take it seriously that we need to build a solid infrastructure layer first before any of this is going to take off. So I'm hoping that if anyone has any questions about these projects, these are all projects I'm working on, including the Aragon and the Aragon DAC, which didn't make it to the slide at the last minute. But if you guys have any questions, there's a decent Q&A session still here about any of these projects. And I want to thank Jeff Emmett, who I totally ripped off the Thai Beaches Curation Market from, and he's a friend of mine, so it's cool. And Alan Borger, who helped me make these slides. So yeah, these are the projects that I work on a daily basis, so if you guys have any questions, thank you. Yeah, so Q&A.
Question on decentralized hardware. Are you aware of any approaches to produce open chips and CPUs and all that stuff, so we can have actually a trusted layer for putting the DataNotes on?
Actually, Jordy's probably best to answer that.
Yeah, right. Doing hardware is very much like doing software. When you write software, there are hardware languages like the XDL and so on, and there are some initiatives that for doing open source hardware layers. Then you have to produce it anyway, but that's just a very automatic and can be done in very places. We are aware of some projects that are doing that. We are at very early stage yet, but yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah, I know for DataNote we're looking at Risk 5 and trying to get in on that, but yeah, it's a lot. We're early stages, right? So we gotta at least get our MVPs out there on whatever hardware we can get. That makes sense.
Yeah, hi. Is the Ethfinex, what are the plans for its expansion, and how quickly do you think we're going to see more of that going on, I guess?
Man, I wish I knew more about Griffy. I really love it. Oh, look, Jordy knows.
Yeah, the main difficulty that Griffy right now is having is mainly the the problems with the governments. In general, the big corporations like Telefónica in Spain, but they have a lot of influence on the government, and it's very hard to fight against them. There is it's a matter of financial. They get like the worst part. They get only support when they have to go to a village that's very far away, and it's just not profitable for the big corporations. So it's not a fair game. And yeah, that's a matter of just pushing on that direction and teaching and helping explaining politicians how the thing works, and it's hard stuff. But they are working on that in that direction.
And I think once we actually start integrating crypto economics into a meshnet system, it'll go a lot smoother. They won't need to beg for subsidies because it'll be a lot cheaper than going through a giant ISP. Any other questions about like Aragon DAC or Telegraph, especially?
Can you give us an update on this?
On which ones?
The Signal platform.
Yeah. So I'm working on a project called Telegraph. Actually, just changed the name like 2 days ago. It was Ethfinex before. It's still very early stages, as you can tell. But basically, this has been something that's been coming up in all of the governance conferences lately, that we need some kind of signaling option so people can know and be informed on what the situation is in Ethereum. And we're working on it. So the first goal is just to get some kind of basic website up where we can take tweets and kind of put them in there and say someone has a stance on this EIP of for or against, and then we'll see how it goes. We're hoping to basically aggregate other people's information. So Slockit, for instance, has a really interesting signaling where they take the gas used and use that as a voting power. So you can see the user's voting power based off gas, and they can vote on an EIP whether they support it or whether they're for or against it. And also the miners can vote, or the devs, because how much gas a contract has used is also metered. And so there's some really cool experiments. Obviously, there's coin voting and other like sources of getting information from relevant stakeholders on issues. And we're hoping to kind of aggregate them all in one place so that people can see what's actually happening. And all these projects, for the most part, are actually all of them are community-run projects. They're not for-profit entities. Most of them are blockchain-based entities that have no legal structure at all. And eventually will become DAOs once we build that infrastructure so that we can actually have decentralized governance. Yeah, well?
Yeah, so the idea of these kind of evolutions for something like trash DAC, which could slowly grow and kind of become bigger, makes sense. But for something like the Bermuda example, where taking a whole country's infrastructure, do you think there's still a soft way of doing it where it doesn't happen overnight, but you gradually bring it in without kind of, there's already existing power structures which you're going to want to protect what they've already got. Can that happen smoothly?
Absolutely. And that's why it was 2037 before Bermuda was even thinking about it, right? So I think that we have this slow evolution where one service after another starts getting taken down, where it's like, hey, guess what? The state's not providing good welfare for the poor. Oh, look, Chair, this DAC is actually doing it. It's providing services better than the government was. And then eventually, we're using governance systems that are nearly 300 years old, right? At least in the States, even older in a lot of places. So, like Switzerland, I'm sure there's governance systems that are 500 years old here or more. So, I think we could probably use an upgrade. And I think everyone's going to kind of come around to that, especially when all the old people die, right? Like, it'll be like, oh yeah, the internet is so useful. And we can use it to actually solve some of these problems. So I think slowly but surely, people will start to trust that we have the infrastructure, that we can start using more advanced things for our governance, and then eventually they'll make the big leap. But it won't be a big leap because they're already on top of a whole bunch of infrastructure that is decentralized.
We've got time for one more question. Anyone's got a burning question? Good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was really, really good.